Hey,
Sorry.
Joshua.
Hey, sorry, I realized I didn't even have the link to the meeting.
Oh, no worries. We were actually having some trouble here. I was having trouble myself. It seems like there's a couple different, okay, people. Hey. I am going to start our recording and get us going. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited that we are holding this food security workshop. Hi. That we're holding this food security workshop. This is really a topic that folks came out of the woodworks when we proposed this topic area and said, hey, we're doing some really cool stuff. So I'm really excited to be able to essentially have Code for America be a platform for the work that everybody is doing so that everybody can share what it is that you're currently working on, possibly get some ideas, reach out to other folks who are working on similar projects for help if you'd like that. So I'm just really excited to be able to really work as a platform here and let our experts really tell their stories of what they've been working on, what are some of the concerns in their community, and how they're able to address them. So in order to make this a little bit more informal and so that everybody feels comfortable speaking up later on, I'd like to go through and do quick introductions, and then I'll introduce our panelists who will be speaking and presenting, and then we will get going. And I'd also like to make sure that everybody feels free to jump in with anything that they would like to say or anything that they need or any questions they have. Feel free to use the chat box over here. It should show up on the right side of your Zoom screen. And then also feel free to just shout something out if you need to. Other than that, please keep yourself on mute during the session, just so that we make sure that there aren't distractions and background noise. So I will begin. My name is Veronica Young. I am the volunteer specialist here on the network team. I actually am still fairly newish to Code for America, having started in November, but I feel like I've been here for quite a while now, and I'm excited to get to see some of you again and also see some new faces. So if we can just go around saying your name, what brigade you're from, and let's do what are you most excited to work on in the next few months, whether that's a project or a project area. And Josh, since you're the first one in my screen, I'll put you on the threshold first.
Sure, thanks, Veronica. Hey, everyone, my name's Joshua Robbins. I'm part of Hack for LA. I guess recently joined them. I'm also one of the panelists here today, but we'll get to that later. My background is in software development and product. And what was the question? It was, what are you most excited about to work on? I don't know. At Hack for LA, we have a new project that's working to reduce carbon emissions by showing people how much they're polluting, I guess. And I'm really excited to see where that project goes.
Awesome, thank you. Miriam, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marion Pascal. I live in Philadelphia, so I'm here from Code for Philly Brigade. And I'm also on the panel to talk about our app, Near Green, which is about finding healthy food. And I'm excited and daunted by a lot of different projects in my life. So I'll just say I'm excited about, because we're actually all reconvening as a team to get this app really done and launched. And I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, thank you, Miriam. Tom, you're up next.
Hello. Hello, I'm Tom. I'm the developer evangelist on the network team here, along with Veronica. And I also volunteer at Open Oakland. And what I'm most excited to work on right now is the project that I've been working on for some time around campaign finance visualization as we sort of gear up for the election, a special election in June, and the midterm elections in 2018. So helping make sure people understand campaign finance.
Awesome, thank you. Bethenny, you are up next.
I'm Bethenny. I'm with Civic Data Alliance, which is the Code for America Brigade of Louisville, Kentucky. And I'll be one of the panelists, but I guess I'm most excited. We're really, like, specifically for CDA, extensively focusing on like how to become more inclusive and really focusing on like justice issues that promote inclusivity. And so that's something that has been like a big thing for our brigade and is kind of like a 360 or 180 from where we have been in the past. And so it's been an uphill battle at points, but it's been really exciting to watch just like things come to fruition, like between completely like overhauling our code of conduct to just how we're asking people to conduct themselves in Slack and other places. So and then watching different projects, how our project focus has changed from like a gov tech centric like focus to very community centric and meeting the needs of our community kind of thing. So
awesome, thank you. Next up, Dave Mattingly.
Dave, I think, said he was in meeting and wasn't going to be able to talk.
Oh, yeah, so I won't have input. Perfect, thank you. Andrew, you're up next. Okay, I will move on to Nina. Nina, are you able to talk where you are?
Yeah, I can talk. Hi, my name is Nina. I am one of the co-captains of Hack for LA, and I also work as a systems analyst for the County of Los Angeles. And one of the things I'm excited about is building out a Code for California coalition of brigades this year.
Perfect, thank you. Garrett, you're up next.
Hi, this is Garrett. I've heard of Code for America a few times in the past few years, but really last Wednesday here in San Francisco, I went to the first hack night for Code for San Francisco. And so half of my objective here in this meeting, besides learning about the topic, is to sort of get more of a sense about what Code for America and Code for San Francisco is doing and what sort of projects they're working on to get an idea of how I can become involved. And also I saw in this meeting that Code for Tulsa, I think, is involved. They were on the list of sponsors or whatever. And I'm actually connected to one or two people from Code for Tulsa. I didn't realize they were taking part. So several reasons why I want to take part and sort of soak in information and get more acquainted with the organization.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Thanks.
Dave Marino.
Can everybody hear me, y'all? Cool, great. Hey, I'm Dave Guarino. I work on Get CalFresh here at Code for America. I was the founding engineer on it about 4 years ago, and now I am the recently named director of the project now that we're much bigger. So, hello. What I'm really excited to work on is I had this crazy idea this weekend that seemed to resonate when I put it on Twitter that is kind of cool, which is allow people to report when cars are parked in bike lanes, but with pretty much one click, which I think actually I went through and kicked the tires and all the tech, and that actually seems pretty easy, surprisingly. So I was a little bit curious about that, but that may be a side project, or maybe I'll never have time, which is more likely.
Thanks, Dave. Jeremy Freeman, you're up next.
So I'm Jeremy Freeman. I have been involved in Code for Durham here in North Carolina for 3 or 4 years. And I'm also involved in the coalition of Code for North Carolina, or Open North Carolina Collaborative, which is a new CFD brigade that's kind of collaborating on statewide issues amongst the 6 or so other brigades in North Carolina. I came tonight because I had someone who was in Durham, in Hunger, Durham, who was interested in this call. And so I wanted to participate. But I think what I'm most excited about is in the conversation I've been having with people, generally connecting people to resources that are available either through the government, but also through a lot of the nonprofit organizations seems to be a consistent pattern of questions that are coming up. And I was hoping I'd learn some more about that tonight.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Meg Cummins, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. I'm from the Tampa Bay Brigade, and I recently joined the leadership team. And I'm on the call today because I'm really passionate about social determinants of health, and food insecurity is one of them. And that I'm just excited to hear more about that. And hopefully we can incorporate some of your ideas. We haven't done anything with it yet.
Perfect. Thank you, Meg.
Thanks.
Jerry, you're up next.
Hi there, Jerry Hall out of Open San Diego. We're working on a project called Meals Count right now, and that's with the California Food Policy Alliance, and it's basically an app that school districts are going to be able to use to optimize their free breakfast and free lunch programs to the point where we're trying to serve 2 million kids that qualify for free breakfast that don't eat that meal yet. Once we get that program up in place, it will work for the entire state and for the entire country, but there's some things we need to do. So it's one of those projects that if
Hey, Jerry, you cut out a little bit. We can't hear you. I'm just going to give you a minute and see if you're able to join back in. In the meantime, Remy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Remy. I am. Oh, I'll let Jerry talk.
Hey, Jerry.
Sorry, I got a call right while I was talking, so sorry. So I'll just start over. So we're working on Meals Count, and Meals Count is a application that helps school districts optimize their free breakfast and free lunch programs to the tune of 2 million kids in California don't get their free breakfast meals that they're qualified for. And once we get this app done, it will help school districts basically optimize their district so that more and more kids in their district can eat free meals, free breakfast, free lunch. And it's a scalable service where anybody in the state will be able to use it for their local market or nationally, actually. So I'm not sure if you missed the front end of that or the middle or all of it.
No, I think we collectively we got everything.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Sure.
Remy, back to you.
Hi, I'm Remy. I'm a community co-organizer for Open Oakland. I am, we currently at Open Oakland do not have any food security projects in the works or even in the pipeline. So I'm really interested to hear about other things that are going on. And I've heard a little bit about what's going on for Hack for LA. Sort of outside of Open Oakland, I do work on food justice and food access issues as it pertains to policy through urban agriculture and land use. And I just started working on a podcast for the Farm Bill. So really interested in hearing more. And the next project that I'm really excited about is, I think Bethenny is on the call. So working on a Brigade action team for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I think the working name is going to be IDEA or IDEA.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, perfect. I think that concludes our introductions. If anyone else has anything to chime in, just let me know. But without further ado, we will get started on presentations. So Joshua has kindly agreed to go first and talk about Hack for LA's Food Oasis. So I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thanks, Veronica. Let me share my screen. So Food Oasis, whoops, sorry, 1 second. Okay. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Food Oasis is a web application that we've built within Hack for LA that really seeks to be a simple tool that helps people within Los Angeles find healthy food. We have a live website, foodoasis.la, and I can just take you through a quick demo. This is our landing page right here. As you can see, it's mobile optimized, so we really wanted to design this for use on the go, like on your phones. Since it's a website, you don't have to download anything, very low barrier to entry. And so as you can see, we kind of just put the search bar right in the middle, find healthy food. That's our objective here. And so once you click through it and like enter an address, for instance, you can also filter by certain types of organizations or businesses. If you're looking only for supermarkets or farmers markets, so on and so forth, you can filter by that. My video screen is blocking. Okay. And so we'll go ahead and hit search, and it just takes you to a map. It puts you down on a map and lists out the closest businesses to you, or farmers markets, community gardens, so on and so forth. And it's really designed for you to learn about the resources that you have around you. So we really put all of the places closest to you up front. And again, you can filter this list as you please, and you can even pan around, research, and you can view business hours. There's other business details. And so it's just a really straightforward tool, I think, that we've designed here. And so I made some slides. So this was our founding team. There were 6 of us. There's 7 in this picture because Travis was our brigade captain at the time. And what's really important about our founding team was not that we had 2 developers, but that we actually had a subject matter expert or a community advocate, and 3 of our core team members actually had GIS knowledge, and they were very experienced with GIS and mapping. And so that really led to our product forming. So we got started by asking a lot of questions. We first asked ourselves, like, what is a food desert? How can we help these people? Just a lot of the typical questions that you would ask yourself, right, when you're starting to build a new product. And so we kind of came up with a solution that would kind of address 3 different needs. We had a really, really large scope for some reason. We couldn't narrow it down. We could never, or not never, but we really struggled in the beginning to figure out what our focus would be for our product. So the 3 user groups that we tried to help were people finding food, people who wanted to get involved and volunteer, and then also advocates, helping them with like policy change or decision making by providing them with data. And so we kind of racked our brains for a couple of weeks on that, and we ended up going with a mapping tool that would help people find food. And the reason we prioritized people finding food was because we felt like we could directly impact their lives, like day to day. And also just because we had an advantage having 3 mapping experts. So we figured, hey, why not? So, so when we started to build out our map, we noticed that we didn't have much data. We actually kind of wrote this down as one of our challenges. We had 3 major challenges, I think, as a project. The first was data, acquiring the data and also cleaning and validating it. It was a big effort, and honestly, it took us months to clean dozens of data sets and validate them and make sure that we could extract the correct information and the necessary information from them. We did use like open data portals, we used developer APIs, and we also had a bunch of CSVs that were shared because that was actually a really common way for nonprofits to share data with each other, which is just save an Excel CSV and share it. And that kind of took us through our MVP launch, which happened about 4 to 5 months after we started. So as you can see, May 2016 was when we started and all met. And then September was kind of when we launched our beta MVP out into the world for the public to see. That was an interesting time because that's when we realized we needed a mobile redesign because people wanted to use it on the go. So in November, a couple months later, we started expanding our team, but little did we know complications come from that as well. So that was our challenge number 2, which was the volunteers. We had probably at least 20 to 25 people on average every hack night just for Food Oasis LA. And it was great because we were getting new ideas, we were getting an influx of new ways of thinking, new experiences, but then it also detracted from our productivity. We started needing to have more regular stand-ups, and by regular, I mean multiple times a week instead of just once at the beginning of each hack night. Like we would actually need to meet during the weeks on like Friday nights, on Saturdays, on Sundays to get work done and to meet deadlines that we had self-imposed. And the other thing that kind of comes with a larger team is just communication. We started breaking down into sub-teams to get work done. Like designers would work on their graphics together and front end would work on the website together. But we realized that we really needed to improve our communication so that we could all move toward the same goal. And so just pretty quickly, so a couple months after we expanded our team, we launched the website. For the most part, how it looks right now is what we launched back in 2017, January. And since then, we've just kind of been getting out into the food space in Los Angeles, and we met with city council offices, neighborhood councils. We partnered on a couple of events, and we've just been seeking a lot of partnerships since then. Or sorry, we were seeking a lot of partnerships since then. And that brought us to our 3rd challenge, which was the partnerships themselves. So we had existing partners who were really, they were critical to helping us get off the ground. Like the Food Policy Council provided us with a lot of data up front. Hunger Action LA connected us with a lot of the food pantries and the boots on the ground type of volunteers. And they were great, but we had to start making new connections if we wanted to expand our reach. And so that's when we started meeting with city council offices, so on and so forth. But the major challenge here with developing our partnerships was that all of us had full-time jobs. We all had day jobs. And so we couldn't meet with, for instance, we couldn't meet with council offices because they would be working 9 to 5 and we would also be working 9 to 5. Or we couldn't, for the most part, most of our team couldn't attend our events that we partnered on. So we wouldn't have a large following coming to our events because they would happen during weekdays, during 9 to 5 hours. And so that was really a big struggle. And I think we tried to push through it as hard as we could, but I think this is probably what hurt us the most. We started fielding a bunch of phone calls and we started talking to all these new partners, but I think the burnout was just too real for us. I guess if that even makes sense, right? I think the burnout really hit us, and that's when we kind of started figuring out what are our last steps as a project group. With sputtering attendance and commitment levels and varying commitment levels, we started seeking adoption. So we had determined, as our core team, we had determined that we really wanted a nonprofit to adopt our project and take it on as their own. And luckily we did find that with the Youth Policy Institute in Los Angeles. They had already been using our product before we even approached them. And we actually have a connection within Hack for LA that works for the Youth Policy Institute. So he was instrumental in helping us meet and figure out all the administrative things and logistical things that need to happen with a product adoption, in a sense. And so that happened in the fall of 2017. So overall, our project kind of lasted for a little over a year and a half. Hack for LA still owns the project, but we're kind of, again, our focus as the FOLA group was to get our code base spun off into different locations so that people could use it, while Hack for LA would retain ownership of the project, just so that we wouldn't lose sight of where we came from, I guess. And so, yeah, I guess all in all, we would say that Food Oasis was a fairly successful project, but we did have some lessons learned. The first one seems kind of obvious, local brigade support, but I think our Hack for LA support was instrumental in really getting us off the ground. They were really involved. They made us feel special just like immediately from night one. And I think more than anything, that's kind of what kept us, the 6 of us originally, coming back and continuing to put work in on this. The second point is I feel like we don't often ask enough questions. And I think asking questions and finding answers, doing research and finding answers is really critical to developing a product, as well as narrowing your scope. As I shared earlier, our scope was very vast, and I think narrowing it and defining one single user group really helped us get going and developing for one person instead of trying to develop for 3 different people. The fourth point is define success. That also seems kind of obvious, but I think that can help prevent burnout from happening too soon. As long as your team defines what success will look like for your project, if that means your project wants to become its own nonprofit entity, or if it wants to be adopted by other nonprofits, or even if it just wants to have, let's say, like 1,000 average daily users or something, I think defining the success is also critical to the product development. And lastly, it's just the team motivation. I think our team did well in the beginning, motivating each other, meeting on weekends, putting in the hours to really get our MVP and our redesign done. And that was great. We were cheering each other on. We were praising our successes, but I think over time we kind of lacked that, especially as we started searching for adoption partners and just fielded phone calls from other partnerships. And I think that was also pretty critical or instrumental in our development success. And so that's, I guess quickly, that's basically Food Oasis LA. Does anybody, or Veronica, are we doing questions now, or is that for later?
Yeah, no, let's do questions now. Anybody that has a question, feel free to speak up.
I actually have lots of questions because Near Green is really similar. And in fact, we found out about, I could talk about this later too, about Food Oasis from a guy who had visited you guys and then thought that we should do this in Philadelphia only. It was Nathan Hughes, I think, to, then kind of looked around and realized, oh, we're doing something like this in Philadelphia, but we're about 5 steps behind, or maybe 10, depending on how we define success. So I'm really interested because we've talked to, I guess, the back end guy named Dave, maybe on your team.
Oh, yeah, Dave.
Yeah. So we had similar issues too with data and how hard it is to find and clean and validate data.
Right. Yeah, I think what really helped us out, again, kind of like, again, with this theme of like narrowing your focus, for our MVP launch, we actually only launched with like, I think 3 or 4 data sets, and most of them had already been given like a once over. So it was we put all of our efforts and focus into putting up what we could at that time. So I think like, you're right, like the data itself it's a beast and it's always gonna be there. But I think there aren't many other ways to really validate it other than just getting a pair of human eyes on it, unfortunately.
Right. Do you have to do much upkeep?
So we don't do much upkeep. By and large, the website as is, foodoasis.la, that's pretty much what we launched back in January of 2017. We've done a little bit here and there in terms of like bug fixes and everything, but by and large, it's all the same. So the upkeep is very minimal.
Great.
If I can follow on to that, do you find that data sources getting stale as nonprofits kind of come and go, or what they offer changes?
Right, yeah. So that was something that I kind of glossed over. So in the challenge of acquiring the data, it wasn't so much the problem of finding the data, but it was finding an up-to-date data set. Like we found that the LA City Open Data Portal had like a lot of supermarkets data sets, and so we originally pulled that and we started working off of it, and then I think somebody in our group said, hey, there's a Ralph's on my corner that's not even in this data set. And so then we had to go back over the entire validity of the set, and we saw that it was like an older set, and then that kind of pushed us towards looking to public APIs. Like we pulled data from Yelp, we pulled data from Factual, which is also I think it's a data harvesting company, and yeah, so we kind of went outside the norm, I guess, because I know that a lot of focus is on like the open data portals, right? And it's great that we have it, but then it's not always up to date. So we were trying to be resourceful and pulling from other sources.
But does your app offer a way for providers of food to update data on some ongoing basis, or people who are doing food pantries to do updates?
Yeah, actually there is. Man, I don't remember I think it's that. We basically installed a way for us to add, or a way for users to add points to the map. We haven't really hit we didn't really hit our ideal case, which was we wanted to build a public backend, or a public API backend, so that other researchers and other individuals could access our data. What we ended up with is like a morphed backend that's hosted on GitHub. So it's kind of there, but there's definitely a way to update information on Food Oasis.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua. That was a great presentation.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. And if you have any other questions for Joshua, just throw them in the chat. And I am going to introduce our next presenter, Bethenny Patrick from Civic Data Alliance, who will be talking about Feed Louisville, or is it Louisville? I'm sure one of them.
So I'm not originally from here, and I was told when I moved here that I had to say it right or I couldn't live here anymore. And so it's Louisville. It's kind of like you have like a mouthful of something, and then you try to say Louisville.
Okay.
So, yes, that is, people will fight wars over that here.
I thought so. Let me ask.
So, yeah, just like pretend your cheeks are full and then say it. So, yeah. So, I actually wasn't heavily involved when the concept for our hackathon was initiated. And so I am not entirely sure of how that conversation went, but what I know is that basically it started with the city of Louisville has like some of the major corporations in town have like a set number of hours they want to donate to certain causes and things like that. And Humana, who is an insurance provider, it's Humana, had wanted to, there were some people there who wanted to address the issues of food insecurity in Louisville. And there's been, specifically in what's known as the West End, there's some food deserts, and there's been a lot of conversation around that in the last couple of years. And so I think that there were some people who were really concerned about those issues and really wanted to address them. And so that conversation kind of got started, and we had CDA had connections to them. So, they planned this hackathon, and then I appeared like somewhere in the middle of all of those conversations, and I hadn't been very involved before. And then I was like, oh, cool, this is the thing I care about. Like, let's do this. So I personally got really invested in this. And then we had elections like the week before the actual event, and I am the communications lead. So then I like kind of hit the ground running with a lot of content and packaging around the event itself to really kind of promote what we were doing with it. And so one of the first things that I personally like asked when I was listening to different CDA members and Humana people talk about the event was that like who were they already talking to in the community that was doing work around food insecurity. Because for me, my background is like social justice activism. So I am used to working with a lot of like nonprofit or grassroots organizations that are on the ground doing things, whether it's political or not political or, whatever, in multiple forms. And so that was my question, was like, well, who are you talking to? Because I knew that there were people in the city doing work around food justice. And I was going, well, are you talking to them? Are you asking them what they need? Like, what's going on? And so out of that, there was some connections made with 3 or 4 different organizations in town. There's a food co-op that is looking currently to actually have a space, and there's like some community work about finding what area of town they want to be in, and things like that. And so yeah, there was some conversation around that, and then the food co-op, and they specifically were focused on like mapping food banks and stuff like that in the area, and that was one of parts of the hackathon that we can get into. And then there's a couple other organizations that were really focused on like fresh food resources in food deserts in Louisville, and there are several in the city, which is, I don't know how familiar you all are with what a food desert is, but essentially it's defined anywhere that is more than a mile away from fresh produce is considered a food desert, at least by what we have measured it as. And so one of the organizations was New Roots, and they do like a fresh stop market at different months, and people can buy shares in the market, and but then you don't have to, you can just go to the market like a regular farmer's market. But they are in multiple areas of town. And then there's Louisville Grows, which emphasizes teaching people how to grow their own community gardens, and really educating around like agricultural things. And then there was a high school group that came through Humana, well, two different ones actually, both like through contacts with Humana. And one was Winter Grow Green, which is a group of high schoolers that are, they had a vision of going into classroom environments and teaching like elementary school students about growth and nutritional value of plants and fresh produce and things like that. And then like one of their visions was to like teach students how to like have an herb garden like in an urban area or something like that, which is pretty cool. And then another group of like high school students came from Eastern Kentucky and was a part of, they kind of workshopped through like how you message like needing like food security to like how they would message that to their communities. And so they worked with a couple people to really talk about that. So basically, so we had the event, and it was a little wild because we didn't necessarily know what we were getting ourselves into in terms of like depth of need beforehand. And we had set up, you know, a couple conversations with the different organizations to try to get a better feel for what we were looking at. And then when we got there, we really just were like super overwhelmed with what the need was beyond what we had been originally told. And so there's a couple like tangible things that came out of the event itself, but then there's like multiple intangible things that are still like works in progress that are out of everything. And so the tangible things, and I'm just going to drop links because I would share my desktop, but it's a real hot mess right now. So I'm just going to put links in the chat to GitHub repos for things. So 2 maps came out, and they're very similar out of the event, and they were focusing on mapping different food sources in Louisville. So they got their data from Dare to Care and used that. But then I think I've had some conversations with them since then, and there's some work around trying to keep the data up to date, and some frustrations about, you know, having access or lack of access or things like that. But the maps themselves, I felt like were really like comprehensive in terms of what's happening in Jefferson County, which is Louisville Metro, basically. And so that was really cool. And then the bulk of what took place was around New Roots. And New Roots is an organization. They work with local farmers, and they measure their crops. So they work with data about crop yields and things of that nature, but then they also, that's where they get the produce for their fresh market stops, is from the local farmers. So then they have to like estimate what their stop, like what their fresh market stop is going to have, and it's based on like around seasons and lots of things that I don't necessarily understand because I am not a farmer. And so that was really cool to like learn their process. But in the process of learning their process, we found out that they were tracking things through like just some Google Doc that people didn't necessarily know how to put information in, and like long email chains, and just all sorts of like ways that makes everyone who likes their data pretty and neat, that like makes them lose it a little bit. And so there's kind of two projects specifically for New Roots that we are in the process of doing, and we're actually going to hold a second event specifically focused on New Roots needs. And those are an e-commerce site for people to go in and order the produce that they want for their shares. So like a consumer-facing site, but then also like the client side for New Roots themselves on how to track everything that they have in their crop yields and their different farmers. Like I think that their farmer list was like a handwritten list of like people that they worked from, and like it was one of those things where it was one of like, well, you could have at least put it in like a spreadsheet, kind of thing, you know. So there's a lot of work on both sides. And what we're running into is that they had initially paid someone to like create an e-commerce site for them. And it was so overdone and overdeveloped that nobody knew how to use it. And it was just never completed correctly. And it just was a disaster. So we actually were able to contact a couple of the people that had been paid to work on that, because it was not open sourced code. No, Margot's in here. Good, because she could probably speak to that a little bit more than I can. And so it was just like totally separate from everything that they were regularly doing. And it wasn't open source, which is obviously like something we wanted to address a little bit. And so we kind of sat down and like spent that day like brainstorming with New Roots, like what is the best way to create a platform or portal for you to use. And I think based on the needing it from both ends, I think we ended up deciding on like a WordPress platform. And I think there's like some in progress of things, but again, like that's one of those things that's going to have to happen like in this second event for specifically for New Roots. So the bulk of people ended up focusing on New Roots, and then there were like little pockets. And then the Good to Go Green High School students that came, they ended up like, we had people that sat down with them and basically built a startup plan with them. So like if they were to go to like a startup weekend, they would have a pitch all filled out that they could just go and say, this is what it is. And that was cool because I think like obviously it fell within like the concept of food justice, but then also like it was an exercise in teaching students how to create a thing from nothing, you know? And so that was an interesting concept. And I think Margot can probably speak to a lot more specifically to what the conversation was with New Roots, because I was not necessarily like fully a part of that. But I wanted to drop the Medium post about what happened, that because it's a little bit more comprehensive than what I talked about here. And it kind of goes into a little bit more detail because it's a lot fresher than it is now 2 months out. That I've slept somewhat since then. So, but it was really just like the whole day was a lot about going to the community and saying, what do you need, versus like creating new things and redoing work that community organizations were already doing. And I think like for me, that's like one of the things that we've been driving home with a lot of the work that we're doing now is like, let's not create work that's already being done, because that's just overworking people or erasing work that's already been done. But then also like, what better way to connect with the needs of a community than to go to organizations that are already on the ground and doing that work. And really like, that's a way to have a pulse on what is needed, you know, like, and that provides a way for us to be a liaison between maybe what our local government is doing versus what the needs of a community actually are. Sometimes that's not always the same thing. And so that's a way for us to kind of say, hey, actually, this is what's needed. Like, cool, you wanted to put a Walmart in the West End where there's a food desert, but actually that doesn't really help because these are what the people in the community are saying, kind of thing. It allows us to kind of play that a little bit more. And I think that was a lesson learned for us, is really to say, who is actually already doing this work, and then how can we support them?
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really informative. And does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, perfect. Just in the interest of time, if you have any questions for Bethenny or the folks at CDA, please put it in the chat box. Thank you, Bethenny. And I am going to introduce Dave Marino, who is the director of our Get Cal Fresh project here at Code for America, and I'll let him take it away.
No mute, you got it?
Got it.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I think, I don't know. Okay. I don't know if I, cool. Yeah, great. Thank you. Just want to avoid the chaos of AV. Hey, everybody. My name is Dave. I work here at Code for America on a thing called Get CalFresh. It's a way to make it easier to apply for food stamps in California. And I will share my screen. So, some of you might have heard about Get CalFresh already. This is what it looks like. It is a website. So the real quick version of why we started working on this and what the real mission is that California is one of the lowest participation rates in the country in the food stamp program. It means, as of the latest report, we actually jumped up from 49th to 45th, tied for 45th in the country, so that's great. Utah and North Dakota, you can suck it, we passed you, but we are still doing poorly, and we have about 1.8 million people, it's estimated, in California who are eligible for CalFresh but don't receive it. CalFresh is what we call a program out here. And it's a big deal because California, when adjusted for the cost of living, has the highest poverty rate in the country. 1 in 5 kids in California live in poverty, and the average food stamp benefit's about $200 a month. So getting $200 a month extra for food really goes a long way. So all of our work in this space has been motivated by 2 goals. One, see if we can remove every barrier that stands between someone who's eligible for this benefit and them actually getting it. And making a really positive, dignified, respectful experience, because the other thing that we found is that part of the reason that people may have trouble getting this benefit or may not want to is because the process can be really disrespectful and really crappy. And asking for help should not be a disrespectful experience. It should be a positive experience, and it should be easy because the people who need this help are the ones who already have enough bullshit to deal with in their lives. They shouldn't have to deal with more. So that's what we do. If you can see, I can play around. I can give you a brief demo. You can go to demo.getcalfresh.org and play around with it and try to break it. If you find something that breaks, let me know. But if you click here, you can get started applying now. All of this is very simple technology. So like all this stuff, this is a very basic thing that we do, which is just a quick eligibility check of someone's income. So I live in Alameda County in Oakland. Yeah, shout out Open Oakland. We apply there. We do a little bit of lightweight sort of understanding of your situation. This is a new pattern that we've integrated where people seem to really like yes/no questions. It's kind of low cognitive complexity, so it's easy to answer, but you can get with a series of yes/no questions a lot of good stuff. And I won't go through the whole thing. You can play it if you'd like, but let's say I don't. Great. Let's continue with that star emoji. And we got the farmer emoji and the construction worker emoji. So you put in, like, let's say, how much money did I make last month? I made $1,000. So we have there's a couple special situations that we ask about. So I'm gonna say none of the above here. But you go through, hey, yeah, it looks like you're eligible. So then we let you apply. We explain how the process works, and then you start an application. So on average, it takes people about 8 minutes from start to finish to submit an application. I won't go through all the stuff. I'll call it a couple things. A couple things we're very proud of. We have very human-friendly Spanish. So compared to a lot of the forms out there, we try to make it really sort of easy to understand because a lot of Spanish out there is just straight translated from the paper forms. And they use kind of, the best phrase from a user once was like, bureaucratic garbage language was what someone called it, which is true. So we try to make it easy to understand and all that thing. I won't go through the whole thing, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that matters and how we kind of built it. So one of the things that's important is we have this little live chat thing in the bottom right-hand corner. So you can actually see my history of trolling our various members doing live chat, but we had this from the beginning because the goal was let's get feedback from users. Let's understand where people are getting stuck and all that kind of thing. I was trolling Caesar, who runs our client success, because I was saying, well, what happens if someone asks you a question in Chinese and I ask them a question in Chinese and just kind of tested it out. That is a couple things. The site itself is pretty straightforward and easy to understand and use. There's not that much that's interesting. It's a vanilla Rails app. We actually use very little to no JavaScript. I definitely don't like JavaScript. It's very high performant on low-end mobile devices. In terms of, but like this initial application that you're applying for is really only the first step in the process. I'll show you some work our designer did, Norris, in mapping out the actual process. So what happens, someone submits an application and he he walks through in this nice diagram, kind of like all the different steps. So someone submits one, they may submit documents with it. On the county end, this kind of stuff happens. He describes this government interaction as a two-player game. It's a multi-step two-player game, and this is actually one of his big things that he wants to change, is that if we can make it an easy, basically one-step or single-player game, it could actually be a lot better. So then clients basically need to do an interview. Usually this is on the telephone. Clients need to submit outstanding verifications. These are not like verifications that are really great. These are verification documents that you did not submit with the initial application. Like, oh, I didn't submit my pay stub, so I need to submit that so that the county can approve me because they need proof of how much income I made. And then the county makes a determination. And then ideally, the applicant gets CalPERS benefits. And that's the first sort of thing. I call this out because actually one of the things that we found to be most useful beyond building anything is just mapping out how the process works and showing it to people. Kind of like the phrase I've heard some people say, which I really like, is find the truth, tell the truth. A lot of people don't see end-to-end how government services work, and I wish there were more people documenting that because I think it's valuable in and of itself. I'll also show, Norris did some work in where people get stuck in the process. So these numbers are a little bit need to be validated, but he's looking at who gets denied. We process about 15,000 applications a month at this point across the state of California. And we talk to our users all the time. Whereas we have a 35-day survey that goes out to all users, but we also do text message and email and live chat support throughout the 30-day process. And like this is some of the stuff, like some people are over the income limit because didn't include income from a second job, which was childcare, or didn't include VA benefits, which like may not have known. People didn't get their interview. They didn't receive the interview notice until day after the, didn't pick up the phone because she was in class, she was a student. People why they might get stuck for missing verifications. All this is based on real users. She couldn't get her pay stubs from her employer in time. The documents weren't readable by the county. This kind of stuff. And other reasons, like got a job offer in New York, moved to Florida. That's a good reason to not be approved for benefits in my mind. So all of our work is oriented towards helping people through the process, identifying barriers by talking to users, And then working with our county partners, we work with about 33 counties now in California to improve things. Like we can make things better through features, but also we can do so by like telling people, oh, hey, this is where people are getting stuck. Like we actually have a lot of student denials, and we're starting to talk to our counties who care a lot about college students about this. So let me see, bureaucratic garbage language. Yes. Oh, I saw a chat little thingy, so now I got the chat. Nobody else can see the chat, right? No. Okay. Getting rid of the chat. Great. So that is Get CalFresh. I was going to say, one thing I'll show is like, this is our 35-day survey that we do for all clients. Again, like a lot of the making stuff easier is good and it's great, but like what matters really is users and their feedback in my mind, and how many we can help, what they say about it, what their experience is like. Some of the best stuff I like is the fact that we get structured data, for example, on approval, which is kind of the big thing that we're going for, as well as why people say they don't get approved. And in fact, we're finding this to be a pretty high fidelity source of data that may be higher fidelity than some county and state data, because it's by people who actually know what happened, and the admin data is kind of bad. So with that, I want to say, I took some notes. I have thoughts on stuff related to this. But I will stop there and hold for questions first. Stop share.
Hey, Dave, I have a question, Jerry Hall. Was the metrics illustrations that you just showed, was that done programmatically, or is that done by hand?
The ones in the website or the ones in the PDF?
In the PDF.
Oh, in the PDF, that was most definitely done by hand, because that was our designer Norris doing a really excellent job.
I was thinking that would be a really cool interface or a really cool kind of dashboard to have to help administrators see stuff that kind of percolates up, for different elements. But that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's one of those good examples of like, if we tried to write that in code, it would be way less beautiful, at least if I tried to write it in code. Not even liking using JavaScript especially. But yeah.
You working with anyone at LA County to get it implemented here?
Sorry, can you say that once more? I know that you're at work.
Oh, sorry. Are you working with LA County Department? I think it would probably be DPSS.
Yeah, so it would be DPSS. We're not currently working in LA, though we're planning on doing that this year. They've had a lot of transition and had a big, actually, IT transition over the last few years, which they only wrapped up at the beginning of this year. So we're kind of waiting for the dust to settle, but it seems like it's settling now, and we've got a couple contacts at DPSS. So my hope is by the end of this year, yeah.
Hey, Dave, what are the other languages that are being offered at this point?
So just English and Spanish. Oh, sorry.
And what are the plans for the future?
So right now it's English and Spanish. We obviously would love to support more. The big issue is that the initial application is only one step, and we're doing all this work to support you through the process on SMS, on email, on live chat. And we can't really, I feel very mixed about trying to offer other languages when we can't support you, because that stuff's really important. The other thing is actually just at the nuts and bolts level of implementing other languages. We have to do a translation process for every single time something changes in the app to get it into Spanish. And that itself has already been a challenge in terms of keeping the language high quality and like consistent in style and friendly to users. So like, I want to make sure we get that process really quick, really high quality, and consistent before we branch out into other languages. The one opportunity that I've really loved from a social justice angle is there's a bunch of languages that actually aren't even supported on the existing official sites. I'd love to offer those, like Actually, Vietnamese is not offered in Santa Clara County, which is crazy if you know San Jose. So like that would be really great, but that's the trade-off there. And right now we're not quite there at that point, I think.
I was going to ask, because like, would it be worth it to measure like demographics to figure out what languages you could or could not implement on the site, kind of thing? Like what language is most common, kind of thing, besides like English and Spanish? What are your more common languages?
Yeah, so we actually ask people, we do allow people to select a different language. And so we have that data, so I could pull that up even if we want to, in terms of like what people are saying their preferences. And that gets passed to the county who wants to do their interview, or who needs to do their interview. It's interesting. I would say the best source of it is honestly our county partners, because they're the ones who know where people kind of get stuck. I'd say there's an interesting user finding though, which is that a lot of people who are from particularly much more uncommon linguistic groups, often English is easier because they have someone like a family member or a friend helping them through the process. And it's actually easier to have that person looking at the English and helping them understand that. So that's been an interesting finding where like I have a friend who lives with someone who speaks Arabic and is actually a refugee from Iraq who's on CalFresh. And she was helping him do his SAR-7, which is a 6-month report. And the form came in Arabic, but like she was actually getting help from someone who only spoke English. So it was really better to get it in English for her, or for him. So it's a more complicated thing, I think, than it at first blush it sometimes seems.
Just to throw in, there's the other factor is there might be greater stigmas for people that who speak foreign languages, so they may not even want to touch the site just because of their own cultural differences. So it might still be good, maybe even just to have a little explainer saying we can't get to your language yet, but you know, please use the system however you can. And
yeah.
I have a question. This is Miriam. Can you speak about the time it took to create this? Because I know one of the things I've been thinking about, many of us have been thinking about, is what it means to develop as a professional and develop an app as a professional, and what it means to kind of do it as a brigade volunteer or as a team of volunteers.
Yeah. So I'm a software developer by kind of trade and background, but I tend to think I want to write as little custom code as humanly possible. I'm a big fan of what my old friend Jake used to call no-stack software. So you just take off-the-shelf third-party web services, cobble them together with like Zapier and crap, and prototype with that, because it's actually, you can move a lot faster, get to real users, understand their needs better, and also it can often be more maintainable. So I actually tend to do as little, like in terms of how long this took, we went through many, many iterations of this. The first iteration, we basically rebuilt it like 4 times. So all of those were to get at new chunks of data, and it was like, what's the bottleneck? In the very first version, or in one of the versions, we just used an off-the-shelf piece of software called Typeform for web forms, which I highly recommend for prototyping. You basically don't need to write any code, and you can have a web form hooked up with Zapier, goes into Google Sheets for a backend, and you're done. So I want to be sensitive to time because I know but that's my thing. Is like I like to not write any software or as little software as possible, and also like a lot of the opportunities, particularly with partners, if you can give them something that's off the shelf, like hey, here's a Google Docs flow you can use, they can deal with that for the rest of life, and they don't need to get a Ruby developer to come fix it when it breaks. So I never write software. I hate software. I'm a software developer, and I hate code. It's self-loathing personally, but I hate myself for having written that code and then it breaking. So yeah. Oh yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dave. That was really great and really informative. If anybody has any further questions, please drop them into the chat so Dave can answer anything more. In the interest of time, so Carlos is actually not able to join us this evening. His family is very involved in the teacher union strikes in Oklahoma. Which I'm excited about. So anyways, last but not least, we have Miriam who's presenting with Code for Philly about their projects. And so I will let you take it away, Miriam.
Hey everyone, let me see if I can share my screen. Google Chrome, here we go. So I'm part of the, as I said before, part of the Code for Philly Brigade. And I entered this project, it was a hackathon project, as a writer. I'm writing a book called Code Like a Girl, and I really wanted to include civic hacking. And so I showed up at a hackathon for Code for Philly and thought I would just kind of poke around, get some great stories, and leave in time for lunch. Well, by 8 o'clock that night, I was still there. And, we've really taken Near Green all the way, and it's inspired me to do a lot of other things like really learn to code and develop as well as we try to get this done. So Near Green started as one woman's 23-year-old college graduate woman's desire to move into Philadelphia and also live near healthy food on a 23-year-old's budget that could not afford Whole Foods and all sort of things like that. Philadelphia is the poorest city in the US. It has heavily gentrified areas surrounded by the vast majority of the city, which is quite poor. So she Googled, of course, to find a neighborhood with a decent store nearby, and she came across the City of Philadelphia Healthy Corner Stores Initiative report. So Healthy Corner Stores is a somewhat national initiative to convince corner stores and bodegas to have refrigerated containers so that they can offer healthier foods, fresh fruits and vegetables. So it started off as Marissa's personal quest and immediately became more about food deserts, food justice, and finding healthiness. And we've already kind of seen a lot of this with that wonderful talk that Joshua gave us from Hack for LA's Food Oasis. So I'm going to skip some of that because we know the story. You get together, the data is not there. You're combing through L&I data and you're coming through data sets. And then someone says, hey, what about all the halal restaurants? And then you have to talk about what is healthy food and how, I live in a neighborhood with a food co-op that's got, everything you could want for every level of healthiness. But some people's definitions of healthiness are, oh, I can get a fresh zucchini and a banana in my neighborhood. So, really dealing with who's the audience, what are their expectations of what they'll find at this app, and so on. We developed it as, this is basically our MVP for the hackathon, for hackathon demo night. And then we realized that it's a long way from having an MVP for a hackathon and actually having a viable, workable app. So, and it's also really hard, and this is the question I was giving to Dave, is, we're on, as Joshua referenced too, we're all working. This is not anybody's lead project. So it's really taken a little bit for us to get going on it again, despite our intense wishes that it be available. Our ideal is it's a very lean, mobile first web app. Most people, we kind of have had a lot of data in Code for Philly about the kinds of phones most people have, the kinds of data plans most people have, the fact that nobody wants apps that are going to drain their data with for something like this. And we've also talked a lot about what kind of mapping we have, should it be Google Maps or Mapbox, et cetera. So we've had a lot of conversations about where it should be. So we were all kind of in the midst of trying to figure out what's our next step when along comes, and let me move this around so I can look up here. So we start out with this guy calls me up out of the blue. His name is Nathan Hughes, and he's just come back from LA. He's the local American Diabetes Association guy, and he says, hey, I found this amazing food site in LA called Food Oasis. And then I kind of poked around and realized that there's a version of something like this in Philadelphia, and how can I get you really excited about making it happen? So it was kind of amazing to find a local nonprofit partner and feed off of their excitement, because the city office that had created the report was for Healthy Corner stores was not particularly excited about us making an app about it. We've got great connections between Code for Philly and the Office of Data and Innovation and other city offices, but not this particular office. So that was a little complicated. Also, some of their data was licensed from Nielsen at the time, so we couldn't even have access to the full data, and that became a back and forth. So, as others, this was their idea of what would the change would be in these corner stores. So you'd go from just having whatever to having, a few items. So again, that's was complicated. Here's some of the marketing materials. Here's a sense of Philadelphia and where the kind of areas of greatest poverty are. I can tell you there's a lot of poverty in these other areas as well. And that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to get together for this summer to really do another push, to gather a much larger team. We need to have several hack nights just devoted to data, to figuring out what are the best ways to clean it, to verify it, to make sure that it is inclusive of what's available. And Joshua was so right. I mean, when we spoke with some members of the Food Oasis team, it was so great for them to say, yeah, this is really challenging and this is really hard. The other thing that we're trying to develop hand in hand with actually moving forward and doing a final sprint is having a partner who's going to take care of it. And who, these things, when we think about the model for development, I mean, someone is paying for it, someone's time is being worked on. And I wish none of us had to think about this, but we do. So figuring out who's, what nonprofit will work, is it worth it almost is the question. Is it worth it to continue this if we don't yet know that we have a nonprofit partner at the end who will take it on? We really think a lot about marketing and, again, that question of what makes finishing a Brigade app worthwhile? What are the other things we need to have in play, and how can we move it from being a total volunteer effort to being something else? We were so excited when we found the Food Oasis site. We're not sure whether we're going to just fork their code and tinker with it and make it work for Philadelphia, or we're going to go with we're also thinking of using Rails formula for doing this. So there are a lot of technical issues we have about, just decisions to make about what to do here. But the overall, and I think the challenge is how to do this as volunteers. And I think I'll end there. I can show you this. This was our demo night MVP, and it should work. And a Zoom takes up a lot of space. It looks like it's searching Kansas City, but right now here is the other. So you can see this was the same search for 1000 Walnut Street, and this is basically how it comes in. And eventually we want to pull in more data so that you can click onto their website or onto ours, and also that you can get directions immediately, especially by bicycle or walking. So again, this is very basic mock-up here. And I think I'll end there, and we can all have a general conversation about these issues.
Awesome. Thank you, Miriam. That was great. Does anyone have any questions for Miriam?
Miriam, I had a question. This is Jerry Hall. My own business is something where I'm tracking alcohol licenses, and I have an interest in showing the number of liquor stores in an area. So for instance, in Southeast LA or in Compton, there's just a ton of liquor stores and very few bars and restaurants. But those liquor stores are also the neighborhood grocery store as well. Grocery, supposed to be grocery. So have you ever considered, well, I guess there's two different interests here, but I would be really interested in learning more about maybe either getting data and helping clean it, because I can get liquor stores, but it wouldn't be a comprehensive list of all the merchants in the area, but it would be, especially in California, I have, years and years of alcohol license data. So I'm kind of curious if you guys have thought about that too, is just about not just the food itself, but it turns out that the only food that's available is in liquor stores, typically in poorer areas.
That's really interesting. In Pennsylvania, liquor stores are licensed by the state, so they're only liquor store. They're only package stores.
Well, their state, the store isn't, the only thing they sell is alcohol. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
yeah, that's a lot different than California.
Yeah, we're like in the 19th century in terms of alcohol laws here. But that's really, it's so interesting to think about the liquor store being where you go to buy your food as well. You know, but I think you're right. Like some of the data we were looking for and we had to hand do was big box stores, which in a city are smaller than big box stores in other areas. But this is also where people, this is one of the sources of healthy food. In Philadelphia, the Port is one of the major distribution centers for fruit and vegetables. So there are all of these like fruit and vegetable stores that are basically product that's going to, that doesn't have enough days left to actually go to grocery stores, but you can go and it will, you know, purchase it and will last a day or two, but they don't have websites. It's like this, you know, we had to learn a lot about the sub tiers of where and how food is sold in our very poor city. And it's also a creative food city. I mean, and the question of food deserts has been raised already. There are kind of smaller grocery stores that have opened up in areas that were very, very underserved. So there's a lot going on, and we really just, you know, are trying to figure out how to, it's really a data and hands on the ground issue for us right now. We feel like we have a general sense of where food is and what the need is. We also want to make sure we're really interested in the Code for America model of scaling and making sure that code for one city can work for another with a bunch of changes. So that's why we're really interested in, can we just take Food Oasis's back end and kind of, which is, I think, Python, I think their code is Python and then Django front end, and kind of see what we can do that so we can start kind of a chain of events.
Well, this brings up a question for you and Joshua, is that, have you guys considered using OpenStreetMaps instead of Google Maps, just because OpenStreetMaps, you have the much larger collaborative community building the database of stores, for instance?
That's a great idea. I think Food Oasis uses Mapbox. Is that right, Joshua?
Yeah, we're using Mapbox, which is based on OpenStreetMap.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Miriam. And just because in the interest of time, we have a couple more minutes left. Since Carlos wasn't able to join us, I did just want to share the project that they're starting to work on in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Let me share my screen. It's called Meal Maps, and essentially it's a way for folks to find meals during the summertime when kids are out of school, and of course during the summertime, the summertime is one of the hardest times for many families since so many kids do get their most substantive meals at school. And so I am not an expert. He just sent me the link a few days ago, but just wanted to show it to everybody. They're still definitely under construction and trying to get this rolled out for the summer, but it's another idea of a project that folks in the network are working on. So really exciting. So with 2 minutes left, I'll leave room for maybe one more question. And then I also want to make sure that we offer ourselves up as a service. If there's any ideas that you saw here and you want to get in touch with someone, please feel free to go on to Slack. Feel free to get in touch with us, like, oh, who was that person from that one brigade that I don't remember? And we'll be happy to loop you in. Lastly, we will be posting this video along with a short write-up in the next couple days on Medium, so please look out for that and share with your networks so that folks can get ideas and be able to use this great knowledge that was imparted here today. Does anybody have any last questions or comments? Oh, that's a first tonight. Okay, perfect. So I'll give everyone 1 more minute back. And like I said, this will be recorded and posted. So have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.